Hi, it's Matt from Flip Games, and in this video we're going to look at Maya's UVs. So let's get started. So we've optimized this mesh now. We did it in one of the other videos and just in the last segment of this video. So now we're going to UV the object. It's the size we want, it's the shape we want. So we need to lay out these UVs. So the way to do that is, now this tab here will open up, so this button here will open up the UV editor. Well, because I'm working on one screen, I need to use a different one. So that's how you would open it up if you wanted it on the second monitor. But actually, Maya has different workspaces here. And if you click UV editor, you see that you can work in 3D and the UV editor all in the same thing. And if I actually minimize this outliner here, I can work in all of it. So, and you'll notice as well that at the moment the UVs are screwed up. So if I was to turn this button on, okay, this is not good. This is stretching, warping, just generally not good. If you were to put a texture on this, the image would be warped and would be stretching into the corners. So we need to re-UV this. Now, having this on here, this is brilliant for when you're in the editor like this. But actually having it here is a pain. I get confused, so I turn it off. The only thing I turn on is this. Now what this does is, if it's blue, it means it's the right way round and it's good. If it's red, it means it's flipped. So if you were having detail on this, it would be flipped. So having this button on means that it shows whether the UV is flipped or not. For example, if it's blue, it's not flipped, but if it's red, it is. Now, sometimes this doesn't matter, but most of the time you'll not want to have flipped UVs. If you had anything unique on it, it would be the wrong way round. If you had scratches, it would be the opposite way round. And with UVs nowadays, with the likes of Substance and Quixel Suite, you tend to have unique UV space. I very rarely overlay my UVs over the top of each other. Just generally because of if I want scratches on the whole desk, if I have overlapping UVs, it's going to have the same scratches on that UV island. Now, one of the things I haven't explained, I am sorry about this, is what a UV island is. Now, a UV island is basically the shell of this. So this at the moment, even though it's all messed up, is a UV island. So we're going to have to remake this in a minute with some tools. And I'll show you in a minute, once we've got this laid out, the different islands and shells. So to begin with, what we want to do is we want to create the UVs. So if we just automatic map this, it's going to lay out the UVs for us. You can see that it's thinking. But the problem with this is that even if you just press this button, it's not ready. You want to lay it out a bit better. Also as well, there are a couple other ones. There's cylindrical for cylinders, spherical, camera-based, and planar. Now planar works in a way, let me shift left click on here to get the menu up. You'll see that you can planar map in the X, Y, and Z. So for example, we could planar this top and go apply. Ooh. Click the Y-axis. Keep image width and height ratio as important, so you need to tick that on and click apply. And there you go. We could do the same with the bottom. And it's the same, so if you press Alt in here, you'll move around, zoom in and out, F frames whatever you got selected. And you can select in faces, vertices, edges, and UVs. And what I did was I just selected the faces, left click, drag to select those. If I click apply, you'll see. And you'll see that it's red. So actually, this isn't probably the best way of doing things straight off, but it is a way of doing it. Cylindrical I don't use, and spherical I don't use either. And that's because yeah, it's just not needed. And I can show you a way of doing a cylinder at the end of this video. So at the moment, so this is selection in UVs, and for a long time you could only move UVs. You couldn't move faces. If I double click on it, it'll select all the faces to do with this UV shell. If I double click on the UVs, it'll select that shell again. And if I was to select this edge, it'll show that it's going to sew to this edge. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to sew this edge to this edge. So if we go under cut and sew, sew. Now that didn't work because what it's trying to do is it's trying to move it together. So actually it's not sew. Do apologise. It's stitch. And then it's stitched together. And we can do the same with there. So now this UV has got a continuous line across here. So if, for example, we were to have like a line that goes from there all the way around, it's going to go around there. Now, because of how small this gap is here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you another tool. So I'm going to select these faces. I'm going to hit cut. And what that does is it separates out the UV. So for example, if we wanted to say cut this, we can do. And it would cut it into individual pieces and then we'd have to sew it back together, stitch it back together. Or we could use create UV shell. And what that's done is it's created a UV shell with just that selection. So that's one way of doing it, is actually using the UV cut tool to do that. But to begin with, I'm just going to stitch, and all I did was shift, right click, stitch, and that will stitch it, because you can see that we've got some already. And if I hold G, that's going to stitch it. And what I'm going to do then is I'm going to go sew. Now this could take ages, so the best way to do it is if you hold Control right mouse button and go to edge ring, and then hit sew. Oh, that didn't work. Let's not do that. Deselect that by pressing Control left click. We can sew it. So if all these pieces were together, so a stitch. Now, ooh. Yeah. So just be careful with that because it might sew things together. So that is one way. You could select the edge loop and then sew, but you have to just be very careful. Okay, and then I'm just holding the middle mouse button with Alt selected to do this. I'm just going to hit sew. No, don't do that, Matt. Stitch. There you go. I'm going to select all these edges. Stitch. And then I'm going to select these edges and sew. Same up here. Now if I try and stitch those two together, you can see that it warps it, so we don't want to do that. We can do this, so sew those together. And now this is out of line, so what we can do is if we grab the UVs like that and go to align and snap and just click this one here, it will align them together. Now another way of doing that would be, and I'll show you that actually in a minute. Okay, so I'm just gonna stitch, just repeat on the other side. Now we can't do that because obviously this one's here. Okay. And there we go. So we've got a couple of points. So let's find out where you are. Okay. And sew that together. Same over this side. Because that's now attached, we need to sew it. And there we go. Oh. Maybe not do that. There you go. Okay. So we should have, ooh, if there's anything like that, just stitch it. Okay, so we've got our first piece UV'd. Now we can drag that off to the side for the time being, because what we're going to do is once we've got everything UV'd, we're going to set the texel density, and then we're going to do a layout. So the next thing I want to show you is this bit here. But for example, if this was, say, slightly rotated like that, that's not right, is it? So if we look at the back, you can see it's not right. So what we can do is, there's this tool called Orientate Shell. And if you click on it, it'll orientate the shell to 90 degrees, which is brilliant. Another one, which is useful, which we probably won't use for this, but I'm going to show you anyway, is all these UVs are the same. So if we go stack and orientate, you notice that now they're all sharing the same UV space. So I can do it for this as well. But if I wanted them not to share the same UV space, I can do this. So select the faces and go like this. And it will just orientate them out. And it's such a brilliant tool. But that's not what we want. So we've got this back one. So I'm going to select the edge. I'm going to stitch, stitch. Now, I'm going to do that and just sew those two edges. So if it's a white line, it means that it isn't sewed. But this is the it also, like if it's inside like that was there, we can sew that together. But if it's on the outside of the shell, you don't want to sew it because it will be attached to something else. So we don't want to do that. So that's the top of it, and that will be the bottom. So for stitch, stitch. Okay. So now what you want to do is, if we select this, so that's one draw. If I double click, I can move that off the way. Okay, so those are my inside of my drawers. So if I was to isolate this now, you can see that they're all sewed together. So we don't need them anymore. That's that done. So all I was doing then was just stitching them together logically. So that you can see that's that bit there, that's that bit, that's that, and then that's the top. So it's just laying them out logically for when you come to texturing that you remember where you've put them basically. So I'm just going to move that off to the side. I'm just going to, let's do the draw. Now another tool is sometimes you'll need to relax your UVs, and we can do that by just clicking the unfold. Now it's not going to unfold anything because they're thingy, but this is very good for organic stuff. I might show you that in a minute. We've also got something called straighten. So we can actually straighten the UVs out if they're not thingy, but the Orientate Shell does a good job of that anyway. Okay, so let's... And if you want to rotate them, you can do by going into transform and clicking this button here, and it will snap rotate, or you can hold J and just select the rotate button to rotate it. And you'll notice as well that on here you can see the lettering and it's going the right way around, so that's what we want. I'm just going to stitch these. See, that's going the wrong way around, so let's rotate it round. Yep. And that's really important, especially if you've got wood grain or any details flowing inside the text. You want to go in the right way. Okay, so I'm just going to split these off. I'm just going to cut them. Not that one. And again, I'm just going to straighten this out. So I can just hold Shift, right mouse button, straighten. And the same there. Okay, I'm just going to move that off to the one side. Okay, so what I can do now is I can delete that. Just move that down. And then I'm just going to UV this quickly. Just going to move this off to one side as well. It's not what I want. Let's just cut that. And to be fair, that might just be sticking out way too much, so what we can do is we can cut that and create UV shell off those. Just rotate them round. And it all depends on the wood grain as well. I'll just isolate that a minute. We can see where the seams are going to be as well. So that's another big thing. We need to make sure that our seams aren't going to be in like the awkward place that can be seen. And if they are, they need to make sure that you hide them. There you go. So I'm happy with that. Move that off to one side. So once I'm happy with that, I'm actually just going to delete these because they're not UV'd yet. I'm just going to group these. So group, Control G to group them. Yeah, and I held V to snap it into position, change the pivot and all that. Okay, so we've got that. So the last thing to UV is this. So, and once you get used to this, it'll come second nature and you'll be able to do things quite fast. I'm just hitting the sew button here, so I'll just grab the sew to do this. No, can't do that. And I can grab this tool and hit this one here. Do that, line that up. I mean, because it's so small, you're not going to see it. It doesn't matter. It's a little bit off. Oh, actually, saying that. Let me grab that. Okay. So I've got those, move them off to one side. So I've got my desk pretty much UV'd, so I'm going to combine these together. So selecting those, shift right mouse button, combine. I'm going to do the same for this. Show me the history. And for this demonstration purpose, I'm going to combine these together as well. Okay, delete the history, freeze it out. I can get rid of all this, go in, and call this desk mesh. There you go. So the next thing I want to do is I want to just show you the textile density and then a layout tool, and then we're pretty much finished for this introduction series to Maya. So what I want to show you now is this textile density. So before I was saying that, like these squares at the moment are different sizes, which is not what we want. So if we get the get on this, so the map size is going to be 1024 by 1024, the texture size. I prefer to keep things even, not even, but like whole numbers. So if I press 5 and hit set, now each square is the same size because it calculates the size of the mesh in comparison to the textile density that we've said, 5. This number can be bigger, smaller, it could be 16, it could be 32 if you really wanted to. We're going to stick to 5, so everything that we make in this scene now is going to be set to 5. the next thing I need to do is lay these out. So I could go around and lay it out all by myself, but luckily there is a layout tool inside of here that helps with this. So as long as you've got set to unfold 3D, and you come down here and set this to 1024. Now in between it, I've asked it to have 5 pixels distance between each shell. You could have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, whatever you wanted really. What this means is if, say, you're painting, you've got a lot of room in between the shells. So click apply with the object selected. Okay, and you'll notice now that it's actually laid it out while keeping the best texel density possible. There you go. Now you got your texture sheet here. And then we could now save this out as a snapshot if we wanted to. So we can click this little camera here and set it to target, and then whatever size you wanted to do. So 1024. Oh no, there you go. Just make sure it's set to target and where you're going to save it, and that will give you a wireframe of your UVs, so that you can then overlay that inside of Photoshop or whatever else you're using. Or what you can do is export this into Substance Painter and start to paint on top of the 3D mesh directly. But before you do that, you need to make sure that you've got your UVs set. Thanks for watching this video series all about Autodesk Maya. It's been an introduction series on some of the tools that I use on a day-to-day basis when I'm working with table flip games. If you want to see more videos about game development, we have a whole range of different videos on our YouTube channel, and you can also visit our Patreon as well. So I'll see you in the next videos. If you like this video and want to see more, we have a range of videos on our YouTube channel covering topics from programming to art, and eventually we'll have animation tutorials on this site. If you'd like to support us, you can subscribe and like, and if you want to have early access to these videos, have a say on what topics are covered, and also have access to the source code and art assets from this series and other series, please visit our Patreon. The link is in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week with a new video.